United States President Donald Trump has finally publicly admitted that he was wrong about dictator Putin, and therefore it's time to move from so-called diplomacy to decisive support for Ukraine. Today, Trump stated that the United States will continue and even increase arms supplies to Ukraine, and not only defensive weapons, but also offensive ones. In addition to this, Trump announced an important statement about sanctions against Russia and increasing pressure on the Kremlin. And on this occasion, it is written that Trump has finally admitted his own mistake. Putin is inadequate, and dealing with him is a sign of not respecting yourself at all. And many commentators say that Trump's character suggests to us that when he comes to such conclusions, things could go very badly for Putin. I'm Pechie. It's July 11th. Let's review things sequentially. There's a lot of very interesting information here. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave any comment, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechie News. The link to it is in the description of this video, and there we post news as it comes in. So remember that it was Winston Churchill who is credited with the phrase that you can trust Americans to do the right thing, but only after they have exhausted all other possibilities. They say that Americans always talk for a long time, but when all diplomatic tools have been used, Americans finally start to act. The same should be expected from the current United States President Donald Trump, whose leniency toward Vladimir Putin on the issue of Ukraine has lasted for far too long. Based on his recent statements, it seems Donald Trump is beginning to grasp the true nature of those he is interacting with. If you want to know the truth, Putin is constantly messing with our heads with all sorts of nonsense. He is always very polite, but as it turns out, all of this is meaningless. This is a quote from Donald Trump that he voiced this week. And here I just want to recall how we discussed on this YouTube channel what was found about Putin. After all, which heartstrings of Trump need to be played on? Putin is always courteous. Putin has always praised Donald Trump. Putin has always assured Trump that only together with him can they finally come to an agreement. Like all the presidents were bad, then the saintly Trump came, and with him they will definitely reach an agreement. And all this time, Putin was simultaneously increasing the bombings in Ukraine and wasn't even planning to hold any reasonable negotiations. In May, Putin himself declared his readiness for direct negotiations with Zelensky about a ceasefire. But then Trump said that he would come to these negotiations in Istanbul, no problem at all. But later, Putin himself refused these negotiations, coming up with a bunch of completely unrealistic demands for both Ukraine and the West. And still, Putin kept and keeps lying about being ready for negotiations. And so, falling under the influence of the president of Russia, whose flattery is just a tactic to buy time, allowing him to continue his aggressive war against an innocent neighbor, that is Ukraine. Trump seems to have gotten smarter and finally saw what's really going on. On Monday, he ordered the delivery of Patriot missiles, which had been temporarily blocked by the Pentagon, to strengthen Ukraine's air defense, which has been seriously damaged by intense drone and missile attacks. That's a dose of realism, which is welcome, of course. And now it should be reflected in the renewed participation of the United States in the war, both in terms of supplying new weapons and tightening sanctions against Russia. President Trump's mistake was a complete underestimation of how deeply committed dictator Putin is to the military adventure he started back in February of the year 2022, or to be precise, even at the beginning of 2014. At that time, Donald Trump considered Russia's war against Ukraine to be a fruitless, senseless conflict that could be resolved just like that. Typically, within 24 hours, similar to a Manhattan real estate deal, generally at Kiev's expense. As we understood, Putin saw and continues to see this war as a sacred mission. So for Trump and Putin, these are absolutely two different wars. For Putin, nothing but the complete return of Ukraine to Russia's sphere of influence will do. And further, as the quote says, Putin is not only determined to turn his southern neighbor into a vassal, but ideally, he would destroy Ukraine as an independent state and incorporate it back into Russia. This all-consuming ambition has fostered in Putin a high tolerance for pain, even if it's someone else's. Despite combat losses, with killed and wounded approaching 1 million, the Russian war machine not only continues to operate, but is also gaining momentum. Armored vehicles, ammunition, drones, production is thriving. On Wednesday, more than 700 explosive drones and decoys were launched across Ukraine. Attacks involving 1,000 drones are expected to become the norm. Putin believes he just needs to keep Trump at bay while he finishes his work. Well, and this once again confirms that Trump already has everything. Simply every reason to finally expose the dictator and unleash the tremendous power of the United States of America to save the Ukrainian people. And let's put it this way, to punish the Russian dictator not only for the war against Ukraine, but also, in Trump's own words, for the personal humiliation of Donald Trump. The President of the United States should support the Senate bill that provides for secondary sanctions against countries that finance Russia's war effort by buying its oil and gas. And it should be understood that these countries include not only China, India, and Turkey, but also some European countries. Let's be honest, European countries also continue to buy Russian gas and oil. This includes Hungary, Slovakia, and to some extent, Germany. And maybe they also need to be pushed to finally stop doing this. The sanctions regime also has many vulnerabilities. It's time to exclude even more Russian banks from the money transfer system and to transfer to Kyiv Russian assets worth $300 billion that are held in banks and the European Union. It's crucial to reopen arms supply channels and restart large-scale weapon deliveries to Ukraine's armed forces, as was done during Joe Biden's era. And here we remember Winston Churchill again. In 1940, the Americans did the right thing by supporting Great Britain, and the victory in the Battle of Britain showed that it was worth it. And as the quote says today, bravely defending their homeland despite the hail of deadly drones raining down on them, Ukrainians have also earned the right to assistance. At last, Mr. Trump is beginning to see the true face of the Kremlin flatterer. He must not give in to persuasion again. Well, the publication Politico is still wondering whether it has finally dawned on American President Donald Trump that Vladimir Putin has no serious interest in peace talks and is in no hurry to end the war in Ukraine. Or perhaps Trump's friendship with the Russian dictator, whom he called very good just last month, has finally ended. And so in Politico, they come to the conclusion that this remains in question because with Trump, you never know for sure. This is where part of the problem lies, according to a quote from Politico. His diplomacy is marked by abrupt shifts in rhetoric, reverse decisions, delays, ultimatums, and threats of total destruction. And it worked in real estate deals in the New York market, but on the global stage, this is a much bigger game. And Putin may very well conclude, as he has before, that there isn't much behind Trump's loud statements and that it's enough to just wait it out. Kyiv never believed that Trump or anyone else could secure a favorable peace agreement, but Ukrainian officials had long hoped that the United States president would become increasingly irritated with the defiant Russian president, which would make Trump support them more substantially. They don't believe that Putin will agree to anything except the complete capitulation of Ukraine unless he is forced to do so by military means. Trump, on the other hand, seems to believe that he can convince Putin to make a fair deal by threatening to launch an uncompromising economic war. He talked about this back in January, addressing Putin directly. The United States president also stated that he is ready to impose tariffs and even strengthen sanctions against Russia if the Russian president does not stop the war. But that was 5 months ago. Will his impatience make him go further? So far, there are almost no signs of that. I'll leave it at that. Friends, share your opinions and conclusions about Trump's positions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like.